The first time Emma pointed her camera at her, she forgot to breathe. It wasn't because of the light or the setting, it was because the woman in front of her looked at her like she already knew every secret she'd ever tried to hide. Los Angeles had a way of making people fake it, fake smiles, fake confidence, fake love. But when that woman, Isla Rivera, stepped into Emma's studio, there was nothing fake about her. The air shifted. The city noise outside dulled to a hum. And Emma, the girl who saw everything through her lens, suddenly saw herself for the first time. Emma was 23. A photography prodigy who'd been hailed as the eye of emotion by a local art blog. But in truth, she was exhausted. Her work had become sterile, all technique and no feeling. Her boyfriend, Chris, was a nice enough guy, dependable, uninteresting, and as far removed from her world as one could get. He sold insurance. She captured souls. And lately she couldn't find her own. When her professor recommended Isla for Emma's next project, a model with presence, "You'll like her," Emma didn't expect much. Maybe another pretentious wannabe who thought a pout was emotion. But when Isla walked into her studio in that pale silk dress, barefoot and quiet, Emma's camera trembled. "Do you want me to pose?" Isla asked, her voice low and melodic, like honey dripping into warm tea. "No," Emma said before she could think. "Just be." And she was. For the next hour, Isla didn't act. She simply existed, raw, calm, magnetic. Her eyes followed Emma's every move, her smile barely there, her body language unreadable. When Emma raised her camera, she felt something tug at her chest, an ache she hadn't realized had been waiting there all along. By the time the session ended, the studio was dark except for a single bulb hanging above them. Isla slipped on her jacket, her perfume faintly sweet, something like jasmine. "You shoot like you're trying to find something," Isla said, turning to her with a look that felt too knowing. Emma froze. "Maybe I am." For the next few days, Emma couldn't stop thinking about her. The photos came out stunning not because of technique, but because Isla's presence bled through every frame. Her gaze seemed to follow Emma through her screen, haunting, alive. She tried to distract herself. Dinner with Chris. Editing deadlines. Coffee with her best friend Rachel, who always seemed to know when Emma was spiraling. "You've got that face again," Rachel said, stirring her latte. "What face?" "That I met someone who messed with my whole identity" face. Emma rolled her eyes. "She's just a model." Rachel smirked. "And I'm just the Pope." The next shoot was at an abandoned greenhouse on the outskirts of the city. The air smelled of dust and damp leaves. Isla arrived in a simple white shirt and jeans, no makeup, no pretense. "Hope you don't mind," she said, brushing hair from her face. "I like being natural." Emma swallowed hard. "You're perfect." It slipped out before she could stop it. Isla paused, her eyes softening. Then she smiled, slow, quiet, devastating. During the shoot, Isla kept looking directly at her, not the camera. Every time she did, Emma's pulse quickened. The world seemed to blur around them, the creak of the glass panels, the sunlight fractured through cracks, the faint echo of wind. Afterward, Isla sat beside Emma on the dusty floor as she reviewed the shots. "You don't just take photos," Isla murmured. "You fall in love with moments." Emma laughed, trying to deflect. "That's kind of the job." "No," Isla said, her voice barely a whisper. "That's who you are." The silence that followed was heavier than air. Emma's heart pounded. She turned, and for a moment she thought Isla might lean in. But she didn't. Instead, Isla stood and brushed off her jeans. "Send me the photos when you can," she said with a small smile. "And maybe next time let me take one of you." That night Emma couldn't sleep. She sat in her apartment, scrolling through Isla's photos again and again. Every image felt alive, too alive. She saw herself reflected in Isla's gaze, vulnerable, uncertain, yearning. Chris called around midnight. She didn't answer. She went to the mirror, staring at her reflection. For the first time in years, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. The next morning, she found herself at Isla's building without even meaning to. It was an old brick loft downtown. Isla opened the door, surprised but not shocked. "Emma," she said softly, "you look like you haven't slept." "I haven't." Isla tilted her head. "Come in." The loft was filled with light. Paintings lined the walls, abstract, messy, alive. A cat purred lazily on the windowsill. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. Emma wandered to a painting that caught her eye. Two figures, faceless, tangled in a swirl of color. Who are they? Emma asked. Isla's voice came from behind her. You and me. Emma turned slowly. You painted me? I painted what I felt, Isla said, stepping closer. You happened to be part of it. The distance between them felt fragile, like glass waiting to break. Emma's breath hitched. Isla's fingers brushed her wrist, light as air. And for the first time Emma didn't step back. But nothing in this city stayed simple. The next day, Chris showed up at her studio. He'd seen something in her eyes, guilt maybe. Confusion. Are you seeing someone? He asked. Emma didn't answer. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. Jesus, Emma. A girl. Something in her snapped. Don't say it like that. Like what? Like it's wrong. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, not understanding, not forgiving, just done. Good luck figuring out who the hell you are. When he left, the silence was brutal. Emma sat on the floor, her camera in her hands, tears streaming silently down her face. Later that night she texted Isla. I think I messed up everything. Isla replied. Or maybe you're finally starting to get it right. That weekend Emma met Isla at the beach, empty, cold, beautiful. The sky was gray, the tide low. Isla stood barefoot in the surf, the wind whipping her hair around her face. Emma lifted her camera. May I? Isla nodded. The photos that day weren't perfect. They were blurry, overexposed, chaotic, but they were real. Every shot was a confession. When she lowered her camera, Isla was standing in front of her. Emma, she said softly. You don't have to hide. I don't know how not to. Then let me show you. And then Isla leaned in, slow, deliberate, and kissed her. The taste of salt. The crash of waves. The sound of Emma's heartbeat echoing louder than the ocean itself. For once she didn't think about the light, the framing, or the rules. She just felt. The next morning, Emma woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a moment she didn't move. Her lips still tingled faintly. Her heart still ached in that sweet, terrifying way that comes after something irreversible. She reached for the phone. 30 missed calls from Rachel, 5 from Chris, and 1 text from Isla. Are you okay? Emma smiled faintly. She didn't know if she was okay. She only knew she wasn't the same. By noon, Rachel showed up at her door uninvited, holding 2 iced lattes and an expression that could slice through steel. You look like you've just been hit by enlightenment or a train. Which one is it? Emma took the coffee with a tired grin. A little of both. Rachel plopped onto the couch. Okay, spill. You've been ghosting me for 3 days, and I'm 90% sure it's not because you've suddenly developed an allergy to sarcasm. Emma hesitated. The words felt heavy, new, dangerous. I kissed someone. Rachel froze mid-sip. Oh my God. Wait, not Chris, right? Please tell me you didn't circle back to that oatmeal-flavored man. Emma laughed despite herself. No, not Chris. Rachel's eyebrows rose. Then who? There was a long pause. Emma's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Isla. The silence that followed was almost comical. Then Rachel's lips curved into the slowest, most dramatic grin imaginable. Holy shit, she said softly. You did it. You actually did it. Did what? Fell for a girl. Emma exhaled shakily. It's not that simple. It never is. Rachel leaned forward, her voice gentle now. You okay with that? Emma looked out the window. The city shimmered in the afternoon haze, beautiful and ugly all at once. I don't know. But for the first time in a long time I feel real. The following week, Isla invited her to an art exhibit downtown, an underground showcase for independent photographers and painters. The theme was identity and illusion. The gallery was small, tucked between a thrift store and a tattoo parlor. The walls were raw concrete, the lighting soft and intentional. Emma walked through the crowd of artists and dreamers, her camera swinging against her hip, her pulse uneven. When she saw Isla across the room, her breath caught. Isla was wearing black, sleek, simple, magnetic. Her hair was tied up loosely, a few strands framing her face. She was talking to a man in a tailored suit who looked far too interested in her smile. Jealousy hit Emma like a sharp kick to the ribs. It was irrational, she knew. But emotion rarely asked for permission. When Isla saw her, her expression softened instantly. She excused herself and crossed the room, her eyes bright. "You came," she said, her voice low enough to drown out the chatter around them. "Wouldn't miss it." "I'm glad." Isla's hand brushed Emma's arm briefly, a touch so subtle it might have gone unnoticed to anyone else. But to Emma it was everything. They wandered through the exhibit together. The walls were lined with pieces that seemed to breathe, faces distorted through glass, silhouettes dissolving into color. One photograph caught Emma's attention. A woman standing in front of a mirror, half her reflection fading into static. "It's like she's disappearing," Emma murmured. Isla nodded. "Or maybe she's becoming something else." Emma turned to her. "Is that how it feels? To start over?" Isla met her gaze. "It feels like breaking and healing at the same time." Later that night, after the crowd thinned, they ended up on the rooftop of the building. The city stretched below, glittering, endless, lonely. Isla lit a cigarette, the ember glowing in the wind. "You don't smoke, do you?" "No," Emma said. "But I like the smell. It reminds me of my mother. She used to smoke on our porch after fights with my dad. Said it helped her breathe the anger out." Isla smiled faintly. "Did it?" "No. But she liked pretending it did." They sat in silence for a while, watching the traffic crawl below. The air between them hummed with something unspoken, desire, maybe, or fear of it. Finally Isla said, "You know, I never meant for any of this to happen." Emma looked at her. "Any of what?" "This." Isla gestured between them. "You. Me. Whatever this is." Emma swallowed hard. "Do you regret it?" Isla's eyes softened. "No. I'm just not sure I deserve it." Emma reached out, her fingers brushing Isla's hand. "Maybe you don't have to." Isla turned her hand over, lacing their fingers together. "You make it sound so simple." "It isn't," Emma said. "But maybe it's worth trying anyway." They started spending more time together, late-night editing sessions, spontaneous drives up the coast, mornings spent sharing coffee in silence. Emma learned that Isla had grown up in Santa Fe, that she'd run away at 19 to escape a life that never fit her. She'd modeled to survive, painted to stay sane, and learned early that beauty was both her weapon and her cage. "You look at me like I'm art," Isla said one morning, sitting in Emma's studio as sunlight painted her skin gold. "You are," Emma whispered. Isla smiled sadly. "Art gets admired. Then it gets left behind. Not by me." The words came out before Emma could stop them, fierce and trembling. Isla froze for a moment, then leaned forward, pressing her forehead against Emma's. "Don't promise things you're not ready to keep." "I'm not promising," Emma said. "I'm just telling you the truth." But the world outside their little bubble wasn't kind. When Emma's latest photo series, the one featuring Isla, was published online, the response was explosive. Critics called it raw and hauntingly intimate. Social media called it something else. "Is this her girlfriend? So she's gay now? Gross. Why ruin good art with this agenda?" The comments spiraled. Brands pulled back from sponsorships. One magazine postponed her upcoming feature indefinitely. Rachel tried to help her manage the fallout, but Emma was drowning. "I didn't think it would be like this," she admitted one night, voice shaking. "I just wanted to tell the truth." Rachel sighed. "The truth makes people uncomfortable. That's why it matters." Isla, however, seemed unfazed. She took Emma's hand as they walked through downtown, heads turning, whispers following. "Let them look," Isla said softly. "They're just seeing what love really looks like for once." Emma wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that love could be enough to drown out the noise. But some nights, when the messages piled up and the phone wouldn't stop buzzing, she broke. One evening she shut herself in the darkroom, tears falling silently as she watched Isla's face appear in the developing tray. That quiet smile, that endless calm, it hurt to look at her and love her at the same time. Isla found her there hours later. She didn't speak. She just pulled Emma into her arms, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You don't have to fight them all," Isla whispered. "You just have to keep being you." Emma closed her eyes. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," Isla said. "But it's real." A few days later, Emma received an invitation. A major art festival in San Francisco wanted her to showcase her series through her lens. It was her biggest opportunity yet. But there was a condition. The organizers requested she replace Isla's name with a pseudonym to avoid controversy. Emma stared at the email for a long time, rage boiling beneath her skin. When she told Isla, the woman just smiled faintly. You should do it. What? It's your career. You've worked your whole life for this. Emma shook her head. Not like this. Not if it means pretending you're someone else. Emma? No, her voice trembled, but her conviction didn't. If they want my work, they take it as it is. As we are. Isla's eyes glistened. You're braver than you think. Emma laughed softly. No. I'm just finally done being scared. The night of the exhibit, the gallery was packed. Every wall gleamed with her photographs, Isla's face, her eyes, her unguarded moments. The final image was titled Becoming. It showed Isla standing in front of a mirror, half in light, half in shadow, whole and unafraid. As the crowd murmured, Emma stood quietly in the corner, nerves crackling through her veins. Then she felt a familiar hand slip into hers. Isla stood beside her, radiant and calm. You did this, she whispered. We did this, Emma corrected. When the applause came, it wasn't just for the art, it was for the truth of it. For the courage to love out loud. Emma turned to Isla, her heart full. You know what's funny? What? I started all this trying to find emotion in other people. Turns out, I just needed to find it in myself. Isla smiled, brushing her lips softly against hers. And did you? Emma nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. Yeah, through you. That night, they drove out of the city, chasing the quiet. They stopped at a hill overlooking the ocean, the stars reflected in the water below. Isla rested her head on Emma's shoulder. So what happens now? Emma looked out at the horizon, endless, alive. We keep creating. We keep loving. We keep being seen. And as the wind whispered through the grass and the waves broke softly against the shore, Emma lifted her camera one last time. Click. The frame caught Isla laughing, her hair wild, her eyes bright, a picture not of perfection but of truth. Emma lowered the camera, smiling. This one, she said. This one's for us. A year later, the morning sun spilled across the worn hardwood floors of a small studio in San Francisco. The walls were covered with framed photographs, fragments of laughter, touch and light. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, editing a new series. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she didn't notice. She was lost in the quiet rhythm of her work, the click and hum of creation. It had been 12 months since her exhibit went viral, 12 months since she and Isla had stood in front of the crowd and refused to apologize for being seen. The response had been fierce. Some doors closed, others opened. Some people disappeared. Others reached out, whispering, "Thank you for showing us we're not alone." Emma learned something important during that time, that courage wasn't loud. It was the steady decision to keep showing up, to keep creating, to keep loving even when the world tried to erase you. That afternoon, she closed her laptop and stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched below her, a blur of sound and light. The air smelled of salt and spring rain. Somewhere down the block, a saxophone player was weaving music into the wind. Inside, Isla was painting barefoot, her hair tied up in a messy bun, a streak of blue across her cheek. Emma leaned against the railing, smiling softly. You've been working on that one for hours. Isla didn't look up. That's what happens when the muse won't stop moving. Emma laughed. Am I the muse again? You never stopped being. Isla set down her brush and walked over, smudging a spot of paint on Emma's chin with her thumb. You just keep changing shape. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in sunlight and silence. Do you ever think about how strange it all was? Emma said quietly. How it started, you in that silk dress. Me pretending I knew what I was doing. Isla smiled. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't know why. Emma thought about that as they drove up the coast later that week. They'd bought an old camper van and turned it into a tiny traveling studio, part home, part gallery. They planned to spend the summer capturing portraits of women across America, artists, workers, dreamers, lovers, each one telling her own story. The honest lens, Isla said as they watched the road unfold ahead of them. That's what we should call the project. Emma nodded thoughtfully. It's perfect. Because honesty is rare, Isla added, glancing at her. But it's the only thing that lasts. Emma reached over, fingers brushing Isla's. And love. Isla smiled. That too. They stopped in small towns, slept by the ocean, laughed in diners at 2 a.m. Emma photographed women who had never seen themselves as beautiful: a mechanic with grease-stained hands, a librarian with shy eyes, a mother with tattoos telling stories of lost years. Each portrait felt like a conversation, intimate, raw, real. Isla helped her connect, helped her listen. Sometimes she painted beside the subjects, turning their emotions into color while Emma turned them into light. One evening, after photographing a woman who'd left her husband to start a pottery studio in Oregon, Emma sat in the van editing the shots. Isla was outside, sketching the waves in her notebook. "Hey," Emma called out. "Come look at this one." Isla climbed inside, her hair wind-tousled. The image glowed on the screen, the woman's hands covered in clay, her eyes fierce and soft all at once. "She looks free," Isla whispered. "She is," Emma said. "She told me she didn't know she could be until she saw herself through the camera." Isla leaned her head on Emma's shoulder. "That's what you do, you know. You show people who they are." Emma smiled faintly. "You showed me first." By autumn, the Honest Lens had become more than a project, it was a movement. Galleries across the country reached out, eager to host their traveling exhibition. Publications wrote about the women who redefined the female gaze. But for Emma, the real success was quieter. It was the way she woke up each morning, not numb, not pretending, just alive. And yet, beneath the calm, there was a shadow, the kind that comes with knowing happiness is fragile. Isla had been painting obsessively, working late into the night. Sometimes, Emma would find her staring at the canvas like she was afraid of it. One night, as rain drummed against the windows, Emma woke to find the studio lights still on. Isla stood barefoot in front of a massive unfinished painting, a storm of colors swirling into a single luminous figure. "It's beautiful," Emma said softly. Isla didn't turn. "It's not done. You've been saying that for weeks." Isla's hands trembled slightly. "Because it doesn't feel right yet. Supposed to mean something. To end something." Emma walked closer, placing a hand on her back. "And what?" Isla finally looked at her, eyes glassy, tired, vulnerable. "Maybe the part of me that still thinks I don't deserve to be loved." Emma's throat tightened. "You don't have to prove anything. Not to me. Not to anyone." Isla closed her eyes. "I'm trying to believe that." Emma kissed her gently. "Then let me help you." Weeks later, Isla finished the painting. It was titled Home. It showed 2 women sitting side by side in a field of wildflowers. Their faces weren't detailed, but their posture spoke volumes: comfort, laughter, belonging. It wasn't perfect. Didn't need to be. When they unveiled it at the final stop of the Honest Lens tour in New York, the crowd went silent. Emma stood beside Isla as cameras flashed, critics whispered, and strangers wiped tears from their eyes. Afterward, an older woman approached them, silver hair, kind eyes, the kind of presence that carried quiet strength. "I wanted to thank you," she said to Emma. "Your work reminded me that it's never too late to tell the truth." Emma smiled. "Thank you for seeing it." The woman touched her arm. "No, dear. Thank you for letting us see you." That night, Emma and Isla walked through the city, hand in hand. Neon lights reflected on wet pavement. They stopped by the river, the skyline shimmering around them. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" Isla asked. "All the time." And Emma squeezed her hand. "And I think it doesn't matter. As long as we keep creating. As long as we keep choosing each other." Isla leaned in, her lips brushing Emma's cheek. "That sounds like forever." "Maybe it is." They stayed there until the lights faded and the city quieted, until dawn painted the sky pale gold. Months later, back in their studio, Emma developed her final roll of film. The photos captured fragments of the last year: Isla laughing by the sea, children chasing waves, women smiling into the light. When she reached the final image, she froze. It was a self-portrait, one Isla must have taken when Emma wasn't looking. Emma stood in the frame, camera in hand, the morning sun catching her hair, a small, contented smile on her lips. Behind her, Isla's reflection glowed faintly in the mirror. Underneath, in Isla's handwriting, were 2 words: "Found you." Emma pressed a hand to her mouth, tears blurring her vision. She laughed softly, the sound breaking and bright. That night, she printed the photo and hung it above her desk, not as an ending, but as a reminder. Years passed. The world changed again, as it always does. Emma's work was displayed in museums, studied in classrooms. Isla's paintings were celebrated across continents. But in the quiet moments, early mornings, late nights, slow Sundays, they were still just two women sharing coffee in silence, still finding beauty in the ordinary. Sometimes when Emma took photos of her, Isla would tease, "You'll never stop seeing me through that lens, will you?" And Emma would grin. Not a chance. Because through her lens, Isla wasn't just a muse or a mystery. She was the light itself, proof that love, once found, doesn't fade. It transforms. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the same beach where they'd shared their first kiss. The air was cool, the waves soft and familiar. Emma brought her old camera, the one she'd used that day. "Still works?" Isla asked, smiling. "Barely," Emma said, raising it to her eye. "But some things are worth keeping." Isla stood by the water, her white dress fluttering in the wind. Emma snapped the photo, the same sea, the same sky, the same girl she'd fallen in love with, only deeper now, more real. She lowered the camera, blinking back tears. "What?" Isla asked softly. Emma smiled. "Just thinking. I spent my whole life trying to capture truth. Turns out it was standing right in front of me all along." Isla walked over, wrapping her arms around her. "Then stop capturing it," she whispered. "Just live it." And so she did. As the waves curled around their feet and the light bled into gold, Emma kissed her, slow, sure, infinite. The world faded, leaving only warmth, breath, and the quiet certainty that love, real love, wasn't about perfection. It was about presence, about choosing, about seeing someone fully and staying anyway. Epilogue: years later, a young photography student visited Emma's gallery. She stood in front of the first photo from through her lens, Isla in that silk dress, half smile, eyes alight with something unspoken. The student turned to the older woman beside her, Emma, hair silvered now, camera still slung across her shoulder. "Did you know her well?" the girl asked. Emma smiled gently. "Better than I knew myself." The student tilted her head. "Was she your muse?" Emma looked at the photograph, at that frozen moment of discovery, of fear and wonder. "She was my beginning." Outside, the light shifted, soft and forgiving. Emma turned her lens toward it once more, steady, grateful, alive. Click. A new story began. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.